What's going on, guys? Ryan O'Toole here for episode 4 of the Endgame series. We are chugging along so far in phase 1. I've done Iron Man with Austin Burt, Incredible Hulk with Rama Screen, and Iron Man 2 with Russell Howell. And now we are at Thor, which came out in 2011, directed by Kenneth Branagh, starring Chris Hemsworth, Tom Hiddleston, Anthony Hopkins, Rene Russo, and a stellar cast, Natalie Portman as well. And I have a very new special guest here on the channel who I've not collaborated yet on the channel. You may know this guy. He did the Rotten or Fresh prediction brackets, and I thank him for that, by the way. He has a great personality, and I think he's a really good YouTube channel, which you guys should definitely go check out. That is Daniel from Halfcock. Daniel, welcome to the channel for the first time, man. How you doing?
Doing very well, man. Thank you very much for having me. It's a complete honor to be on this channel. I mean, I've known you since you were commenting on our videos, talking about like great review, man. And now you did Rotten or Fresh, and now you've built this little empire. So proud of you, man. So happy to be here. Salute.
Thank you, Daniel, so much, guys. Yes, Daniel and I, we are super excited to talk about Thor with you guys, and I have some great questions to ask Daniel. And as always, guys, we want you to interact with us in the comment section below about Thor. What are your thoughts on the film, and what are your answers to these 10 questions that I have? Let us know down below. Let's get excited. All right. Yeah. Without further ado, let's talk about Thor. Daniel, what was your first experience with Thor? When did you first see it? In theaters, at home? And were you familiar with Thor from the comic books?
Absolutely not. I was a Marvel junkie way back then. As soon as Iron Man came out, I was there. I loved every one of these movies. And this was the time whenever my friends just got a car. So every Friday we'd go and see a movie. And so Thor just happened to be the movie that week that we went to go see. Saw it in theaters and had a good time with it.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the similar train with you. The first time I saw this movie was at home, and I knew nothing about Thor, just like you. He's the God of Thunder. Like, he looks weird. This wouldn't work in the MCU. Like, this sounded... It sounded like it was going to be terrible, but then Kenneth Branagh is directing it. He's directed a lot of Romeo and Juliet Shakespeare plays back in the day, and so I didn't know what to expect. Chris Hemsworth, he was back in the day, but I really enjoyed this movie. Like the first Thor, it's definitely one of the more underrated MCU movies for sure, and I think this movie in general just works. It's really good. The performances, the action, the direction, and it's just something that sparked off the Avengers universe, and Thor has become one of the more lovable Avengers. That definitely transitions to my next question I have for you, Daniel, is why did this movie work so well? Was it something about the character? Was it just the story, the myth of Thor? What is it about this movie that worked so well with the MCU?
2 words: Chris Hemsworth. This guy is an eternal pool of charisma. And if you would have brought any other random hunk, like if Sam Worthington were to be Thor, this movie wouldn't have worked. This guy just has this kind of puppy dog charisma that he can be a total badass action star, but he can be a romantic hunk. He's an extremely good comedic lead. And I think they just managed to grab this guy out of the audition process fully formed and really kind of hone in. This guy's so versatile. A lot of people say that Thor isn't one of the best Avengers just because he's kind of lame, but I really think that Chris Hemsworth gives it his all in every kind of personality that Thor has throughout these movies. So, like, without that charm, I don't think this movie would have worked nearly as well as it does.
His charisma, his bitterness at the beginning. He's just this cocky guy who wants to fight and be a king, but he doesn't realize that he's not a king yet, and he has to learn to become that rightful king who's ready to battle. And this movie's so funny because of Chris Hemsworth for sure, and I think another reason why this movie works so well is the casting of Loki, Tom Hiddleston. Like, Tom Hiddleston as Loki, he's one of the best villains and best characters in the MCU, and he worked extremely well. Loki was my favorite character by far in this first Thor movie. Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth, they both have that fantastic chemistry. You definitely buy them as brothers for sure. Just this whole cast is really good. Kenneth Branagh created a great world in Thor, and it's just spawned different sequels, which weren't that good. except for Thor Ragnarok, but this movie was solid. Daniel, what if the MCU never cast Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston, who I think are the perfect casting choices in this franchise? What if they were never cast? Who else could play Thor and Loki?
Okay, God. Thor, you need a beefy dude with a great smile. And so, oh man. I think, see, now that I'm saying this, it wouldn't make sense back in 2010, but I think Jamie Dornan's actually a pretty good choice for Thor. Beefy dude. I think he's got a really charming personality. It doesn't come across quite in the 50 Shades of Grey movies, but seeing him in interviews, seeing him with that sort of Northern Irish accent, I think he'd be able to sell this pretty well. And as far as Loki, you need a guy that's just slimy, but also kind of hunky. I'm going to give a weird choice here, and this might work out, and this might sound terrible. Viggo Mortensen. I think that dude is a chameleon. And if you look at him between something like Lord of the Rings, Green Book, and Captain Fantastic, I think that guy has the ability to slide into roles and really make them his own. So it'd be kind of interesting to see a different side of Viggo Mortensen that we haven't seen quite yet.
I think Thor could be played by Charlie Hunnam. He's got the look, but I don't know.
Yeah, I loved him in King Arthur. That dude is fun.
Yeah, I think he's pretty good choice for Thor. Kurt Russell's son. Why is his name? Wyatt
Russell?
Yeah, and I liked him in Overlord. I think he'd be a pretty good Thor too.
He would be fun.
And for Loki, definitely a charismatic English actor. Tom Felton, Draco Malfoy. He would be all right.
Okay.
Yeah, he would be an okay Loki. So those would be my choices: Wyatt Russell and Tom Felton. Like, two underrated actors, not superstar actors, but I think their charm and charisma could work for those two characters. But
yeah, I'm down with that, especially Wyatt Russell and Everybody Wants Some can carry that comedy, and Tom Felton. I'm trying to see him with black hair, and it doesn't quite work, but I'd be down with it. I'd be down with it. It'd be fun.
Yeah, so those are interesting casting choices. Let us know down below in the comments, guys, what you think would be the perfect replacements for those two characters. Now, here's an interesting question, Daniel. What thing about this movie didn't work? What was the one part that absolutely didn't work and was just bleh?
Okay, so with every superhero movie, every director tries to find a way to make it a comic book, right? And so Ang Lee had like the transitions with panel comics, and Spider-Man managed to put in 2D animation with the 3D background and make it work really well. Kenneth Branagh's idea was Dutch angles. In every scene of this movie, it looks like the camera is like showing a world that's like people are gonna fall off the edge of the earth. And I don't know why he has this need to like tilt the camera and just like zoom in, or like it's just an establishing shot of a diner and the diner is like lopsided. I have racked my brain trying to figure out what is going on with this, and nothing really works about that. So just his Dutch angle, I don't get it.
I think the one thing that did not work about this movie was the Earth stuff. Now, with Natalie Portman, Kat Dennings, and Stellan Skarsgård, where you create this beautiful world of Asgard, and it's beautiful, and it's awesome. And the movie just had a hard time struggling the pacing of each of these worlds, of Asgard and Earth. And Earth was just kind of dull, but it did have some good humor in there. I mean, let's be honest, Chris Hemsworth with "I need a horse," but the thing is, the romance, the Natalie Portman and Chris Hemsworth is just dull, and you just want to get back to the exciting Loki stuff on Asgard, and it leads into an awesome final battle. That back and forth, that Earth stuff, nothing much is going on, and the Asgard stuff, a lot is going on, and I think Kenneth Branagh had a really difficult time of trying to make both of those worlds work. Let's talk about our favorite scenes. There are some awesome scenes in here, but Daniel, if you can only pick one scene from this movie, what is your favorite?
All right, hot take. The most important scene in the entirety of the MCU is in Thor. And the scene is whenever, and I'm going to disagree with you a little bit here, I think the romance actually works out pretty well. It's not a full-blown romance. It's just a getting to know you, getting to da-da-da, King and I. But It's the scene whenever Thor is talking to Jane Foster about the different worlds, about magic. And the most important line, I think, in the MCU is, your ancestors called it magic. You call it science. I come from a world where they're one and the same. You have to sell the audience on this concept that gods and aliens and weirdo sorcerers can exist in the same universe as somebody like Iron Man. Even with something like Incredible Hulk, it stems from a place of science. He's radiated. He's a scientist. He figured out this formula and it turned him into a rage monster. But when you introduce all these sort of astrophysical, galactic concepts, by selling the audience on the idea that this stuff is just science that you don't understand yet, by doing that, you can bring the audience into something like Doctor Strange. You can bring them into something like Guardians of the Galaxy. Hell, you can bring them into something like Thanos. Like, if you can convince people that aliens can exist in this same world, then your entire plan, like, without this being sold to an audience, the Avengers wouldn't exist. The Infinity War wouldn't be sold as well as it would be.
My favorite scene by far is just when they're fighting the frost giants. That was a really cool scene. And Thor, he's really arrogant. He's really selfish. He's fighting off all these frost giants to prove that he's a king. But the group's just like, we got to go back, man. And it's just an awesome battle. Thor's throwing Mjolnir around, and it's cool. But I think the best part about that fight scene is when Odin shows up, and he's like, Father, we'll fight them together. Silence.
Shut up.
I love that
Arrogant
scene
boy.
so much. And it's just a cool, awesome scene, a cool, awesome action scene, and the cinematography looks absolutely great. And Laufey, the king of the Frost Giants, he was okay, but that whole battle scene was by far my favorite scene. It was so entertaining.
I think Laufey and Odin, their dynamic is really fun. There's something like you can tell they're like, it's almost like Thor hit a baseball into Laufey's yard and he's trying to get it back, but he's being a total dick about it. And so Odin's trying to calm him down as much as possible because they have an understanding. But of course, Thor is arrogant and not wanting to get his way. I thought there's like some great comedy. There's some great character work in there that'll extend all the way through Thor's arc as a character, growing from a boy to a wiser yet wounded man.
All right, now let's talk about our least favorite scene. If we could pick one scene that's our least favorite, what would it be?
Whenever Eric Selvig breaks Thor out of the S.H.I.E.L.D. organization as Donald Blake, a lot of the comedy doesn't work. And I feel the way that scene is paced, I understand that Coulson wants to kind of just humor Thor and Selvig and see like what they'll get away with and what they're going to do. Something about that pacing is awkward. It's almost like they cut a scene or they cut a couple lines out of Coulson. I feel like Coulson should have been more quippy and jokey in that scene. A little bit more like he was in Avengers, but I don't know. That scene to me just didn't make me laugh. It felt very much like we need to move the plot forward. So how the hell are we going to get Thor out of here? We're just going to toss him in there, fake his identity, and blah, blah, blah.
Least favorite scene is when they attempt to kiss. Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman. It's not the worst, but it felt awkward to me. Rewatching it again, it just didn't feel that good to me. It just felt like
is it the one near the end where they're about to kiss, but then they kind of like wait for a second?
Yeah,
and you're just sitting there like
that scene.
When is this gonna happen?
Yeah, I promise I will return to you.
It's really weird too because like his face is here. Like these are two lips, right, top and bottom, and hers is here. And I noticed this. They kind of like attack each other awkwardly, and it looks really weird of a kiss.
Yeah, that was definitely the most awkward scene to me, and this didn't work for me. What brought this overall franchise down? Was it Natalie Portman, Kat Dennings? What about this franchise it ended up going, What was the one thing that brought the franchise down?
I'm going to say it was growing pains in phase 2. As some people may or may not know, Patty Jenkins was originally intended to helm the second movie. And instead there was kind of like an Edgar Wright Ant-Man situation where it didn't quite work out. And then they brought in Alan Taylor, who's done a couple episodes of Game of Thrones, and he does well. It just seems like that was kind of a muddled production period. And a lot of phase 2 before Captain America 2 just felt like, you had this huge movie from the Avengers, and where do we go now? What story is going to possibly, live up to that hype, live up to that expectation, set up the universe? And I think with these two movies, they just had the release date set and they had to put something out.
Alan Taylor did Terminator Genesis, which was awful, and here just felt completely off. Like the first movie, it was kind of serious, but there was some humor to it. The second one was extremely dark. Then the third one is just funny from start to finish. But yeah, I could definitely see the tones and the direction being an issue. I think the casting of Kat Dennings just does not work for me personally. She was not that bad in the first Thor. She was annoying as hell in Thor: The Dark World, which we haven't got to. But I think that casting choice alone didn't work for me overall. And some of the production issues and that were why I think the second one wasn't as good as the first one. It just didn't work for me overall. Would you be happy if they kept Kenneth Branagh to direct Thor: The Dark World and Thor: Ragnarok? Or are you happy that they went in with different directors like Taika Waititi and Alan Taylor?
With Thor: The Dark World, there's a lot of gravitas added to Thor's character, where a director like Branagh, who did Hamlet, Mel Gibson's Hamlet is awesome. And that's such like a movie that revels and lives in the theatrical. I really think Branagh would have been able to bring out that sense of gravitas and kind of really dive into the character, not only just with the dialogue and with the story, but also with, the style. I think his style would have been maybe a little bit tempered by Kevin Feige at that point, and they would have been able to bring in something that really sells his Thor character. Ragnarok is my favorite movie in the MCU.
Really?
And yes, it is. And it's honestly because it's a movie that does not care, and it is a 80s Saturday morning cartoon in the greatest sense of the word. I think Taika Waititi brought this story about colonialism and brought this story about redemption and being a better hero. And the movie is so well made that I can't imagine Branagh. I don't like Murder on the Orient Express because I think it's Branagh at its most indulgent and kind of excessive, and he tends to put himself like the greatest casting in the Harry Potter series is Kenneth Branagh as Gilderoy Lockhart, because he's a perfect example of a dude that is pretentious, egotistical, and totally up his own ass. And so Kenneth Branagh, when allowed to go loose, he can go wild and crazy, and it doesn't quite work. Whereas I think Taika Waititi has a great balance of understanding the character, the spirit, but allowing his little quirks to kind of pull the story in different directions that ultimately make it work as a whole.
Thor 1 and Thor 2, he could probably bring his Shakespearean isms to both of those two films. But let's be honest, Taika Waititi, Thor needed a different direction. Like, Thor didn't need to be overly serious. Like, Thor's the funny guy. And Taika Waititi is one of the best comedic directors working today. And Thor Ragnarok is the best in the Thor trilogy because of that. Yes. And yeah, I agree with you. Kenneth Branagh is more Shakespearean and gods and whoa. And Taika Waititi is just more, hey, brother. And yeah, I think that the direction was fine. Alan Taylor, no. Just keep Kenneth Branagh. But yeah, Taika Waititi was the perfect choice with Thor Ragnarok. So we agree with this one on that. Yeah, we agree with each other.
If Kenneth Branagh directed Ragnarok, he would have cast himself as Hulk, and it would have been terrible.
Were you satisfied with the end credit scene to this movie? It's showing the Tesseract, Nick Fury showing Dr. Selvig the Tesseract. Or maybe would you have liked to see Captain America in that end credit scene? Were you satisfied with that end credit scene?
When I first saw it, I remember just kind of sitting there like, okay, I guess Loki's here. Now, I think I thought that Loki possessed Selvig at one point, and I think he does, kind of like hints in his ear. So I was like, okay, there's something going on. But Captain America: First Avenger is one of my favorites of the MCU, so it would have been pretty nice to see maybe just, I don't know, the shield, or it sets up the main plot of Avengers. It's cool. Like, you can just kind of get a little tease of that blue thing and be like, ooh, what's that?
Yeah.
And I think the newer credit scenes are always trying to like either one up themselves or be funny. And this one was just a nice little tease.
Yeah, set up to the Avengers. Yeah, I agree. I would have had a Captain America end credit scene personally, but showing the first Infinity Stone, the Tesseract, that was cool. But I think showing maybe Nick Fury showing Captain America's shield, we need to get this guy next or something. That would have been a lot cooler. But yeah.
Or like Nick Fury, like on his file with Coulson, and he just flips over, and it's like the nerdy looking Steve Rogers with like a like that'd be kind of fun. As I'm coming up with it,
that would have been super funny and interesting, man. But so here is the final question, Daniel. It is, how will Thor 2011 affect the Endgame?
Okay, I thought about this for a while, and I have two ideas. The one of them concerns Loki. Loki is supposedly dead, and I think the one thing that we don't bring in from Loki from 2011 all the way forward is the fact that he's a frost giant. He's got like weird ice powers going on. And so I'm thinking, okay, what if something about Loki as a frost giant brings him back to life, or kept him from dying? You know, that thing about like Captain America, he was frozen in a block of ice, so he stayed alive. You know, maybe that's it. And then the second thing I've got is with Odin and his Odin sleep. Now in the comics, Odin's sleep is a way for Odin to recharge his Odin force and gain the power of the kings of Asgard. So I'm thinking, okay, what if in Endgame, Thor, who is a broken, beaten man, he has to go kind of gain the wisdom of his father, the same way that Black Panther did in his movie. And maybe he has to go sleep for a while, get some Odin force, talk to his dad, gain some wisdom, and maybe learn how to defeat, or, you know, maybe address the Thanos situation in a different way than we didn't expect. I really think that Endgame, to quote Last Jedi, is not going to go down the way we think.
That's a really good theory, man. I'm proud of you. But how will this movie affect Avengers Endgame? I definitely agree with you on maybe Loki. But I think I think the Russos confirmed in a source that he's dead, but I don't know. All right.
Somebody poke him with a stick.
Just to make sure. All right. How will this movie affect the Endgame? Well, there's a couple things you can think about. Thor in particular. We know Thor, he's lost everybody, man. His whole family is dead. Pretty much half of Asgard is dead. Heimdall. This guy has lost everything. His hammer, but now he has Stormbreaker. But how will Thor affect the Endgame? Well, Thor could be awesome. He could be the one to end up killing Thanos. Well, we don't know. We don't know who is going to kill Thanos. Maybe Captain Marvel. But
I always thought it was interesting, one of the lines that Odin says in this movie, where he introduces Mjolnir as the most powerful weapon ever made, but also a tool to build, and that's fit for a king. But now Thor doesn't have that tool to build anymore. He just has the murderous weapon, Stormbreaker. So it could signal something in Thor that's like, he's completely off the chain. He's loose. He's got to go murder everything.
We don't know how Thor will affect the Endgame. We just don't know. Apparently, everything we're talking about in these discussions is probably going to be jack shit, and we have no idea. We have no idea how this is going to affect Endgame. But it is a good question, though. It is a good question. Find one small thing. Yeah, find one small thing in each MCU movie and try to connect the puzzle together. And that is how it affects Endgame. But yeah, this was a very good discussion, Daniel. Thank you so much for answering all those questions and joining me for Thor. It's been an awesome first collab with you, man. Hopefully this isn't our last, but Daniel, yes, tell my lovely subscribers where we can find you on your social media.
All right, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we are on Stardust at Half Cocked. And you can also find me on YouTube at Half Cocked. That is the word half, capital K, OCKED. Just punch that in and you should be able to find us. We do movie reviews. I pitch movie ideas. I talk about movies I've never seen before. I do Blu-ray hauls. We do a lot of everything. So just come out, hang out with a bunch of idiots that love movies, and you'll have a good time.
You won't be disappointed, guys. Definitely go subscribe to Daniel from Half Cocked. His channel link is in the description below. Please go subscribe to him. He has an awesome channel. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video in the Endgame series. If you guys liked it, give it a thumbs up. And be sure to subscribe to both me and Daniel for more content. And stay tuned to the next episode of the Endgame series because it's Captain America, the First Avenger. And joining me for that is Griffin from Men vs. Movies. That's going to be an awesome discussion next. And thank you guys, as always, for watching this video. If you guys liked it, give it a thumbs up. And be sure... Did I already say that?
Yeah, you did.
This is why we edit, folks. Are you gonna keep that? Can you keep that in, Cody?
Yeah, sure.
Keep that in. As always, guys, all my social media links are in the description down below. Click that notification bell on your way out, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.
Bye.